And thank you so much for joining us on another edition of All Angles. I'm Dion Jackson-Miller, and special welcome to our viewers on onespotmedia.com. It's a question that recurs from time to time, and most specifically in the past couple of years. Do we have too many lawyers? Well, generally speaking, the profession isn't necessarily one of the most popular, but there have been concerns about the quality of graduates in terms of what happens when people go out into the field, what happens in terms of training, what happens in terms of practice, and a lot of people are laying this at the feet, they say, of the fact that we now have too many lawyers being graduated. Others disagree and say the profession does need to be opened up. We're going to be talking about those issues on this edition of All Angles. But first, though, let me introduce our guests. We have with us Faculty of Law representative at the University of Technology, UTech, Denmark Clark. We also have 2018 graduate of the Norman Manley Law School, Shani May. Attorney at Law Jermaine Case is with us, and also Attorney at Law, the Reverend Ronald Thwaites, and Vice President of the Jamaica Bar Association, Stuart Stimson, rounding out our panel today. Before we go to our guests, though, let's hear what some members of the public had to say about this issue.
There are sufficient opportunities within the jurisdiction, being the wider Caribbean, English-speaking Caribbean. There are enough opportunities for lawyers out there, especially young lawyers. And there are opportunities also outside of the traditional courtroom advocacy scene. So I'd say there are sufficient opportunities for young lawyers.
I think we are. I feel like the field is oversaturated, especially with the amount of people that we put out every year. And I think people are continuing to go into this oversaturated field because of the esteem that's attached, especially in our Caribbean society, to what it means to be a lawyer. There are way more underpopulated fields across the island where we need people, but people aren't going into these fields. But you still have to think about, are you going to get a job? Is there going to be enough space for 300 lawyers every year?
If there's a saturation or an excess, that means there's more than what can be put to work, right? But with the increase in crime rate, wouldn't that equalize? Because the higher the demand, supply that is in excess gets reduced because it's wanted. And yes, because everybody wants to be a lawyer. You have some cliche occupations that everybody run to. Doctors, lawyers, pilots.
We are approaching a saturation point. It is so that it is important to have attorneys graduate, but of the last perhaps 4 or 5 graduation periods, there are over 200 attorneys graduating, and they have to stagger their call to the bar over a period of 2-3 days. I think we're getting to a saturation point where we may have to consider doing something about the numbers coming out. The fixing of that would require increasing the matriculation requirements, making it a bit more stringent to get in, and other things which I consider to be distasteful, increasing the cost per semester. Those things are, in my view, distasteful.
Okay, law students and lawyers there, ending with Senior Counsel Mr. Shackelford giving their views on whether we have too many lawyers. Well, let me ask Reverend Thwaites to start us off on this point, Reverend Thwaites, in terms of, are we graduating too many lawyers?
I don't think so at all. There are vast areas of law that are underserved. 50 years ago, we had no legal aid except for murder trials. Now we have enough lawyers so that most criminal cases can have the necessity of a defense lawyer. The whole area of civil law is underserved in that regard. Many of our country courts, litigants are still without representation or have to retain lawyers at a cost that they can scarcely afford. If the number of lawyers brings down the cost of legal representation, why, that would be a good thing for the people, wouldn't it?
Well, I've heard some counsel express the contrary view.
That's what you heard just now from, with great respect, was just restraint of trade. No person interested in the expansion of justice could possibly sustain that view.
Jermaine Case, do you?
Well, I think there is a nuanced response to that question. So firstly, there can be a yes answer to that.
Reverend Thwaites is laughing.
So indeed. So firstly, there can be a yes response to that question, because if you look at simple supply and demand forces, applying an economic theory, then in the field itself, no, there is a difficulty sometimes with newly qualified graduates obtaining jobs in the legal sector, whether it is private or public. And there's also the issue of how much you compensate attorneys who are working within these sectors. And that to me is a function of the numbers of lawyers already existing and those who are yet to come. But also there is a no element, and in a sense supporting what Reverend Thwaites has said just now. And also just in terms of people's ability to access legal education. I think we can't say there are too many lawyers, because everyone should be free to pursue their dreams and their careers. So certainly I think it's not just a yes or no type of a response.
All right, I'll come back to that. But Denmark Clark, let me ask you, what do you think?
In my humble view, I don't think there are too many lawyers. Could I please refer to Impact Justice report that was presented for 2018? It noted that there are various areas of law that has not been tapped into. For example, in Trinidad and Tobago, oil and gas law, in Jamaica, music law, in Guyana, you have indigenous customary international law. So there are various areas for us to actually tap into. To say that there are too many lawyers, I believe that it's a misrepresentation to actually hinder the chance of students to pursue their dreams, as my colleagues would have actually mentioned. I believe that we should definitely have the opportunity to pursue our dreams. It's a wonderful field to actually enter into. But can I also mention that if there were too many lawyers, why is there still a backlog in our court system? I should also mention that our former Chief Justice Zela Makala mentioned that there are not enough judicial clerks in the court. In addition, our DPP, Ms. Paula Lulin, would have noted that, listen, there's not enough prosecutors. So are there too many lawyers? I think not.
Okay, well, there is a problem in terms of, well, has been, in terms of courtrooms and number of judges. So everybody can be represented, and if you still don't have enough courtrooms and more judges, then you are still going to have a backlog, I would say. But I'll come back to some of your points. Shanil May?